Esther took the role, took the leadership. She became the guide at the end of the 4th chapter, and that's where we begin the 5th chapter. Vahi bayom hashlishi vatilbash Esther malchut vata'amod b'chatzar beit hamelech hapnimit nochach beit hamelech v'hamelech yoshev al kisei malchuto beit hamelech nochach petach habayit. So it's the 3rd day, the fasting. 3 days, like I think I said yesterday, reminiscent to me of sort of a Har Sinai moment where the Jewish people go and encounter God, the King, with the illusions in this book. That God, that when it says Melech, we think of God and not just, of course, Achashverosh. And Esther is wearing her royal clothing. And she stands in the inner courtyard of the king's palace, facing the king's palace, while the king was sitting on his royal throne in his throne room facing the entrance of the palace. It's interesting to note something that probably was obvious to everybody, but apparently to me, to yesterday when I was thinking about this, which is that Vashti is exiled because she does not come when Achashverosh calls for her. And here we have Esther acting as the anti-Vashti. And maybe that's some of the reluctance on Esther's part. The previous queen was exiled or killed, according to the Midrash, or what we learned as kids, because she didn't come when the king asked for her. And here we have Esther doing just the opposite. Esther showing up when she was not asked for. So there could have also been part of the reason Esther maybe thinks, well, the previous queen, when he calls for me, I come and I better come. But if he doesn't call for me, then, maybe he's going to say the same way he called for her and she didn't come is disrespecting him. So me coming to him when I was not called for is disrespecting him. So it's interesting just to think about that, at least to me. Maybe it was obvious to everybody else, but to me, a new thought for me on this very day, or yesterday, I should say. In verse 2, the key moment, Vayichirot HaMelech et Esther HaMalka umedet b'chatzer nasa chein be'einav vayosher HaMelech Esther et sharvit hazav asher biado v'tikrab Esther v'tiga berosh hasharvit. And so when the king sees Esther, he becomes joyous. He's happy and he extends the golden scepter to her. And Esther approaches it and touches the scepter, demonstrating that he would like her to come in. So her big worries, her big fears, talked about in the 3rd chapter, that word yada. What do people know? Mordechai knew the Jewish story. Esther knew the protocols of the palace. Nobody could go in. And we see what she thought she knew did not necessarily apply. She comes in and he is happy. And he's happy to see her, and he expresses that happiness in verse 3. Vayomer la hamelech malach Esther hamalka uma bakashatecha chatzia malchut v'yinatein lach. What's your problem? Why are you here, Esther? Probably doesn't say it like that. Says it in a kind way. I will give you up to half the kingdom, anything that you ask for. Vatomer Esther. Esther says, if it pleases your majesty, please let you, your majesty, and Haman come today to the feast that I prepared for him. And of course, at this point, we know this is Esther starting to lay the trap that she does for Haman. Vayomer Hamelech ma'aruat Haman la'asot dvar Esther. Vayavo Melech Haman ela mishta asher asta Esther. And so the king hurries. He's very quick to get Haman to come, because that's what Esther asked for, and the king and Haman come to the party which Esther has made. And again here, thinking about going back to that first chapter, Vashti refuses to appear when she is summoned, and here, what does the king do? Esther she's the new king. She's ruling the roost. She wants Haman to come, and the king is doing her bidding. So Mordechai, at the end of the 4th chapter, begins to do the bidding of Esther. It's not him telling her what to do, but her telling him what to do. And now the Melech, the king, Achashverosh, is doing that which Esther asked for with great alacrity. Vayomer HaMelech in verse 6, Pasuk Vav, Lester b'mishtei yayin masha latech v'latein lach, uma bakashatech ad chatzi hamalchut v'te'as. And so again, the very same question, the second party here, Esther is asked by Achashverosh what she requests. What does she want? I will give you up to half the kingdom. And so Esther says, here is my request. Again, with a very nice and pleasing language. To listen to my request. I'm asking Haman and Achashverosh, Haman and the king, to once again come to the feast that I will make for them tomorrow, and then I will do that which your majesty asks. Unclear exactly what that last phrase means. What does that mean? Does that mean I'm going to tell you what I really want? I'm going to reveal what it is that I really want. It's not clear. Or I will somehow do something that the king really wants. It's not clear exactly what she means by that. But again, putting it off, machar, tomorrow I will let you know. By the way, this word machar, if we think back, this has been said, I don't know who I originally heard it from many years ago. When we talk about the war with Amalek, what is Moshe is told? To get Yoshua, to get the general, and Moshe says, machar, right? Tomorrow you're going to attack. In the future, you're going to attack. I'm going up to the mountain. I'm going to hold my hands high, and I'm going to hold the staff. You look towards me for inspiration. Everything is machar. Everything is tomorrow. The destruction of Amalek is something that's sort of it's something that is brings in foretells the messianic period, the destruction of evil. So it's a machar. It's something that we're looking forward to always, the destruction of evil. Unfortunately, that is oftentimes all the way around. Vayetze Haman bayomahu sameach v'tov lev. And so Haman comes out, and we can see Haman is a very joyous guy on that day. However, in verse 9, V'chirot Haman et Mordechai b'shar HaMelech v'lo kam v'lo zam imenu v'yamalei Haman al Mordechai chema. But when Haman sees Mordechai, and Mordechai does not rise, Mordechai does not bow to him, Haman is filled with anger. Haman is filled with rage. The chema, the rage that we saw Achashverosh have in the first chapter at Vashti for not appearing, here feels Haman. And Haman is a person, we said this earlier, he has this obsession, and it's an obsession that destroys him. His obsession with Mordechai is going to call his downfall. And if we want to sort of spiritualize the idea of Amalek, maybe Amalek is this idea of this addiction, this idea of destruction, of obsessive destruction that's going to bring us down. Those who say that about Amalek when they first attacked the Jewish people in the book of Shemot, following the Kriyat Yam Suf, following the splitting of the sea, where Amalek sort of knows they're going to lose. Look at what the Jewish people have done. Look what they did to Egypt. Look at the splitting of the Red Sea. You're going to attack them? You think you're going to defeat them, but they're so obsessed, even if they're going to lose, they're willing to destroy themselves in the process. And that is a spiritual lesson, I think, that all of us can take from Amalek. What's the addiction? What is the obsession? If Amalek can represent that sort of midah, that people get obsessed with their phones, with gambling, with whatever it is that can cause real destruction in their lives. And maybe that's what the core of Amalek is in many ways, and something we should stay away from. There are many other things that they do wrong as well. Continuing verse 10, nevertheless, Haman held his breath, he held his anger, he goes home, he sees his wife Zeresh, here we see a person who has very little self-confidence. He sees Mordechai, he gets all upset, and he has to go home and tell his friends, his associates, his wife about how wealthy he is and how many children he has and how the king has promoted him, how he's the number 2 in the kingdom with the person of the most importance. They don't need to know that. They know that already. There's some self-confidence, self-esteem issues here, seemingly. What does he say further? He says, and you should know, there's just Esther, the queen, has called for just me and the king to go to a party with her. However, and here we see the obsessive destruction. But all of that, everything, all of my wealth and all of my power and all of the family that I have, everything that I have that I've described to you, it means nothing to me when I see Mordechai, the Jew, sitting in the gate of the king. Excuse me. And he doesn't get up for me. And Zeresh has a very good idea. And what is her idea? Of course, the gallows. Set up these gallows, 50 cubits high, chamishim amah. They're going to be gigantic. Everybody's going to see them from everywhere. And Mordechai will be publicly hanged. And with that, you will go to the king. You will be joyous. You can cause the destruction of your enemy. Everybody will see. Everybody will know what happens, not just when you mess with the king, like Vashti, but what happens when you mess with Haman, Ha'agagi. And so we see here the beginning, of course, the turnover, the transition, the Nahafochu that happens in this chapter. Esther has been transformed from this hidden, passive young woman who's listening to her uncle, her father, in a sense, or her adopted father. And now she is no longer scared. She approaches the king, and now she has started the plan. She has taken it into her own hand. She's no longer hidden. She's no longer secretive. And let's say just something here with it, which is this is a theme that we have in the Tanakh, which of course we know that so often the main characters are men and women are much more side characters. And the arc of Esther here is similar in a sense to the arc of Bathsheba, who is the wife of Uriah Hittite, who David sees bathing on the roof and wants to sleep with her and is told she's a married woman, which means David finds somebody else. She's off limits, and David sleeps with her anyway, and she becomes pregnant. She doesn't talk in the entire episode. The only thing she says is, I'm pregnant. And we have the whole thing where David kills Uriah Hittite and has Uriah Hittite killed, etc., etc. Bathsheba is at worst is a victim. You want to say she's willing. It's very difficult to say that exactly how to understand it, but she doesn't open a word. She is an object in the story. She is the object of David's desire, who he impregnates, and as a result of her, kills her husband. The baby dies because God is unhappy with David. But Bathsheba appears later on, most principally in the opening chapter of the book of Melachim, where David's son, Adoniyahu, his oldest surviving son, has announced himself as king and has a whole big ceremony. And a plan is created by Bathsheba and the prophet. I believe it's Gad Hanavi. I don't remember if it's Natan or God, excuse me. And they come to David in a 1-2 punch. And we don't know if it's something that they've made up or if it's something that's true. And Bathsheba there has a voice. And she talks to David, and she gets David to listen to her, and says, you said that our son Shlomo was going to become king, and now Adoniyahu has made him king. And when I read that story, and David is sequestered and hidden away in that story, and I always wonder in that story, it's not clear if Bathsheba is making this up or if it is something that David has said to her in the past. We don't know, to be honest. But we have this similar arc. You can look into that more. It's the opening chapter of the book of Kings. But we have this similar arc of this woman, Esther, who's hidden, who doesn't say anything, who's hiding her identity, who's just listening to the words of her uncle and adoptive father. And then all of a sudden, when the situation is necessary, she takes control. And she is the one who's deciding what's going to happen in the kingdom. And Bathsheba has that similar arc. And so it's a similar thing to think about when we think of some of the great women in Tanakh, and how very often they are sort of the secondary characters, because the main characters are the men, but how strong when they assert their role, their independence, and show their importance, what a great effect they have upon major decisions in the history of our people.